Loyalty is in a massive period of transformation and change brought about by a number of different drivers. Can you explain exactly where we are and what's brought it about and where you think it's going to go next?
Thank you. I actually
Big
think
question.
The change is being driven because brands realize that knowing 20 or 25% of their customers is no longer enough. And the only way to engage with 40, 50, 60% of their customers is really to open up their loyalty program and have more partners where their customers can earn the same loyalty currency in many more places they shop, have much more freedom in redemption, and therefore be able to engage more frequently with the brand. And that generates much better data. The better data allows the customer to receive more personalized offers. And that's really the reason why loyalty programs are going through change right now. They've got to open up to appeal to a much larger base of their customers.
If I can pool all my points and spend them anywhere I like, isn't the loyalty lost?
Well, in a perfectly liquid market, I agree with you. I think you defeat the purpose of a loyalty program in the first place. So you don't want to offer customers total freedom. But I think allowing the customers to earn the same currency in many more places, and then within a curated or selected group of partners where that currency can be spent, I think that actually drives a lot more engagement because the customer can get real utility out of the loyalty points that they're collecting.
When we look at what Keith Mills did in the UK and around the world with Air Miles, all the different Air Miles things he did, he was facing the same challenge we face today. So multiple programs, distributed value, distributed data, but there's still a mistrust of this common third party. And I think if Keith Mills was in the market today, he'd be saying, well, let's look at some of these new technologies. Let's distribute value across a network. Let's distribute data across the network. And let's give the data to and base it on customers' permission. Because the challenges he faced then don't exist anymore. Common collection mechanic, you don't necessarily need a card anymore to collect. You know, data, the data isn't yours anymore. The data belongs to customers. But I do think that that this requires big thinking. I don't think it's going to be done by exchange of value here, exchange of value there. I think for a big play, it needs to be done by a big player like Keith Mills, making what he used to refer to as making the elephants dance, getting the big brands together to do it is still the big challenge, and that's still why you pay a premium for this service. And I think the loyalty market in particular has failed by being obsessed with the transaction. We talk about a subscription service, subscriptions and transactions, whereas actually, in order to win the game here, you have to have utility first. I can name some loyalty apps that are so obsessed with transactions and driving transactions, they forget that an app, you're in the entertainment service. You're in the entertainment business on an app, not the transaction service. And if you take two apps, for example, say the Virgin Red app compared to say the Nectar app, is the one has they're both trying to do the same thing, but one's entertainment in the entertainment business and one's in the transaction business, and one has far more transactions per customer than the other, and it's perhaps not the one with the biggest volume behind it.
The banks, I guess, in terms of what are they're looking to achieve from a customer perspective, I think they are looking to deliver solutions that are more engaging to customers. So it's not just seen as a transactional relationship.
Loyalty tends to have sort of emotional appeal or transactional functional appeal. And Visa would naturally be more on the transactional functional side, but I think just the ability to make the transactions more seamless allows the opportunity to introduce more emotional appeal. And because you have the opportunity to know where a customer is and with which merchant, at specific points in time, there's the opportunity for surprise and delight. Just in the last year, I've been surprised by 3 or 4 brands that have recognized me at a specific moment and treated me with respect and appreciation, and I was like blown away by that. So, I remember that. In fact, I'm sharing that story with you again today. So I think there's the opportunity on both the emotional side and the transactional side. And brands need to be thinking about both.
Do you think good old-fashioned service is going to make a comeback, like good old-fashioned direct marketing will make a comeback, and the concierge service where you talk to a real person who is going to deal with your problem themselves. Do you think this will become, what you pay for, you pay extra and part of loyalty?
To have a team that is ready and waiting to deal with people in person has a cost, and I think that's the trade-off that businesses will need to make. But for me, digital solutions that work, does become far more scalable, and I think generally speaking, certainly the feedback I've seen, customers are receptive to it. But as a big caveat, it has to work.
We were talking and counting up how many subscriptions we've both got, and it's quite a lot. And there comes a time, doesn't there, when you think, I can do without that one, I can do without that one, I can't afford that one. So then the loyalty's gone, isn't it? Now, so the big guy, Loyalty Prime, survives. Can lots of other subscription models survive as well? What do you think, Dan?
The key point here is it a proposition that is delivering, a good perceived value and actually a good real value, tangible value? And I think the case with Amazon, I think that's true. I think, in other sectors, perhaps where the proposition is narrower, as in it's free delivery, what else can it be? What other value? Am I getting, access to, previews of product? Am I getting, access to benefits that perhaps not everybody gets? And I think you need to build that proposition out from just a single point of benefit.
Yeah, I think the subscription model makes sense in certain instances. In the US, about a year ago, unlimited movie subscription, was launched, and then about 3 weeks ago they cut it back to 6 movies a month. Last week, a ride-sharing service in the United States said for $300 a month, you can have unlimited, shuttle rides, around your area. I don't know if they're going to allow someone to drive from Chicago to Nebraska, but I think people will self-select themselves to participate in the subscription. And so if I'm a heavy user, I'm going to pay the subscription and benefit.
Reason why people use Netflix is it's a good service, and actually it learns what I want. I've been on Netflix for a while now. I go in there and I've got things that I want to watch. But if I go on my daughter's Netflix, I think it's rubbish service because I just think, why would I watch any of this rubbish? Whereas I think, and if you take apps, for example, I can name some loyalty apps that are so obsessed with transactions and driving transactions, they forget that an app, you're in the entertainment service. You're in the entertainment business on an app, not the transaction service. And if you take 2 apps, for example, say the Virgin Red app compared to, say, the Nectar app, is the one has they're both trying to do the same thing, but one's entertainment in the entertainment business and one's in the transaction business, and one has far more transactions per customer than the other, and it's perhaps not the one with the biggest volume behind it.
We believe payment has a really important role to play within loyalty. I think, to your point earlier, will customers carry 12 cards in their wallet? Will they even carry a wallet? Probably not. So I think, how does payment become that identifier that links you, to those loyalty programs, to those interests that you've got? And that's a proposition we have in market today. We work with a number of partners where we can effectively turn your payment card in a tokenized fashion into your loyalty identifier. So it makes it easier to earn and benefit.
And is this a closed loop type network or more open loop in adding more partners, or how will that evolve over time?
I mean, from a merchant perspective, it's very much open loop, so we can bring offers, promotions from various different partners into those programs. But in that specific example, the benefit is back within Uber. But over time, could that become a currency that could be used elsewhere? Absolutely. So, we're talking to partners across Europe and beyond, in terms of how can payment turbo boost, if you like, the loyalty programs they have today. From a retailer standpoint, payment helps them to perhaps target the right customers, identify customers that perhaps aren't shopping with them today. So, we're very confident and optimistic around the growth of those propositions.
And that's a perfect example of something that's very low friction in terms of the customer experience, but also very low friction in terms of the value that flows through to the customer. So there's not a middleman taking a big cut. The value is going to the customer, which drives further engagement.
I think it's also a great example of not being too precious about your app. So you've partnered with Uber because Uber's app has traction and has utility. And I think some of the great examples of payment today are saying, loyalty in restaurants started with swipe cards, then they went to their own apps, then with sort of like stamp feet where you could, it was basically an electronic version of one of these. Then they introduced payment. But actually now I think it's saying, who has space for all these apps on their phones? So now they're moving towards payment within someone else's app. So a great example of this is Byron Burger, who have just launched their app where you go onto Facebook Messenger and I can add loyalty onto that. And it's a great example of saying, let's be where the customers are and put payment and loyalty where the customers are and not worry too much about my app that's where I think the future's going to be.
You get some stalls with big queues because everyone wants to go to them for various reasons, and then you get some that have very few customers. Now, if loyalty works the same way, how do you handle the fact that you've got winners and losers?
That's a good question. I think there should be winners and losers. I think I live in Barcelona, and one of the things I like most about Barcelona are the 18 or 20 marketplaces that exist that probably haven't changed that much in...
But I think the biggest thing about winners and losers in this is defining who's a winner and who's a loser, because within a program where you've got, say, a petrol retailer and a cinema, it depends who's going to win and who's going to lose. The petrol retailer will be a gross issuer of points because the cinema is a good pull, or an airline is a great example. As an airline is a good pull. So the airline the gross issuer, in this case a petrol retailer, may be quite happy that they're a loser in redemption.
Yeah, but that's the
because they're gaining
model.
on collection. So
but that's the old-fashioned coalition model where you have one airline or one petrol station or one supermarket. I mean, Nectar's a really good example. But in a marketplace, you'd have 20 cinemas or 40
I totally agree, but I
airlines.
think what's not old-fashioned is going to be the exchange of value. Because someone's giving out value because they want footfall, the other one's giving out value because they've got an asset, like a seat on an aeroplane. And that's just an exchange of value. So it's exactly the same as your marketplace. I've got too much meat, I want to give away meat in order to get clean water or something.
Yeah,
it's
but
exactly
can you
the same
give away
winners and
your
losers.
points in meat because you want to go and buy meat from another butcher?
But one of the things I like about the marketplaces in Barcelona is there might be 20 stalls all selling fruit and vegetables. How do they coexist? Because the fruit and the vegetable is arguably the same in every one of those stalls. And I think it's because you might get a nice smile from one of the people working in this stall, or you might feel like the price is a little better over there, or maybe it's a little fresher over here, or it's closer to the front door. But there are many reasons that influence the customer's decision. And I think creating a marketplace environment gives more freedom to the customer to pick and choose the brands that they want to do business with. But when I say that coalition will evolve into a marketplace, I don't mean that there will be one marketplace. I think there will be a larger ecosystem of loyalty where certain brands that are complementary to each other and as a group much more relevant to specific customers band together around a common loyalty currency.
Now, all the airlines are looking at blockchain for various different reasons within their enterprise, and it was suggested to me by several airlines that they could practice blockchain within loyalty without it upsetting everything so that planes weren't landing or whatever. Is this bad for loyalty if they practice blockchain on it?
I think there's a lot of noise in blockchain at the moment. I think technologists, a lot of the people in blockchain are technologists that are coming into the industry, forgetting that the loyalty industries existed in a technological state for 20, 30 years. And there's a whole ecosystem of technology that does it. And I think blockchain does have a place within loyalty, but not the full place within the tech stack.
The issue is, where are we in the hype cycle? And I still think we're probably 2 to 3 years away from the point where blockchain includes the defined standards and interoperability necessary to start building mission critical applications. So brands should be experimenting with blockchain today, but I think they should be a little hesitant about building mission critical applications today, but they should be fully prepared to be thinking about that in 2 to 3 years' time. And one of the beautiful things of blockchain is it allows you to push the application layer logic into the network, into the blockchain through smart contracts, which means that you're moving all the complicated application layer logic out of your legacy loyalty system into an environment where you have a lot more agility to adapt it to how customers are evolving over time. But that requires mature smart contracts, and we're still a ways away from that. And then I think it's naive to assume that most brands will be on the same loyalty blockchain. We're going to end up with brands spread across many different blockchains, and so we have to innovate and develop smart contracts that are blockchain agnostic, meaning that they can manage transactions across multiple blockchains. And we're working on a couple proof of concepts with quite large companies in those areas today, but our clients don't have any serious intention that those projects will go into production anytime soon, but they want to make the investment today in order to make sure that they're ready when the technology is ready.